Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Julie Hirt. I am a certified soul level animal communicator and a certified soul level intuitive coach. And this is another edition all about books. Hi, everyone. So glad that you are here. Yes, it's time to talk about books again. There's one here that I've been meaning to talk about for quite some time, and I may talk about it again and again and again because it's made such an impact on me. And I cannot recommend this book enough to everybody. And even though it's written for women, I do encourage men to read this book too. You've probably heard me talk about it with my good friend, Kate Foggo. If you haven't checked out our podcast and YouTube channel, Making Light Two Humans Being, I'll put the link in the notes below. But I've asked her to read it too. She's reading it as well. And we talk about it a lot in our show of late. So the book that I'm talking about is called On Our Best Behavior, The 7 Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay to Be Good by Elise Loehnen. Just to give you a little background, Elise Loehnen, I came across her first when she would co-host the Goop Lab on Netflix with Gwyneth Paltrow. I think she was chief content officer or something to that effect. Elise was, but she was really instrumental in bringing some of the cool topics that they talked about on the Goop Lab, which included mediumship, also included psychedelics, I'll say women's health. It was also women's sexual experiences, but it was real. If you haven't checked out the Goop Lab, I highly recommend that too. Anyway, this book is amazing. I also will tell you up front, when you read this I needed to read this in chunks. Kate's finding it too, because it does bring up a lot of patterns that we have been taught, that have been put in place for centuries. The patriarchy is the overarching word. And now I say that word a lot in my household, and my husband rolls his eyes. At the same time, he also understands what I'm talking about. The patriarchy, mostly designed by men, I will say probably 99.9% designed by men, as a way to further their power as well as oppress women. However, I want to make it clear, this isn't necessarily about men versus women, because men are affected negatively by the patriarchy as well. It isn't the patriarchy for me, particularly after reading Elise's book, who puts it way more in perspective, is really a system that's here that we have created predominantly in Western cultures. Of course, I'm of Western culture, so I can only speak to my culture, that has been put in place, and it is not sustainable, and it is not sustainable for women, and it is our opportunity to do something about this. It's also not sustainable for men. And there are examples in here that she does talk about where it benefits men to read this book too. So I just want to make it very, very clear. This isn't gender specific, right? So this is a system. However, and so I'm just going to say that. I don't want to say however, because I don't want to negate what I just said. It's the 7 deadly sins is the framework that she uses to go through each sin, and how each sin has been used to teach women. For example, the sin of sloth, which is a really big one for me right now. And if I don't rest, I'm not doing all that I can. I'm not helping. I don't allow myself to rest, which is so true. And I find myself exhausted. And I know so many of my female colleagues who are exhausted. Then that's just one of them. And the animals, I will tell you, what's so fascinating is with animal communication sessions and even animal lessons. Since I've been reading this book, the animal lessons even take in some of the work that's in here, because the animals want us to rest. They will show us, look how much animals rest versus how much we allow ourselves to rest. Look at the sin of greed. Look at the sin of, oh my gosh, there's just so much in here. The sin of gluttony. There's all these different types of things. I'm kind of getting off topic because this book is just so enlightening, just so amazing. But the 7 deadly sins, and she actually adds one as well. We have got sloth, envy, pride, gluttony, greed, lust. Anger is a good one, especially that's one that the animals are working with me on. Sadness, is the one that she adds. She does do a brief history of the patriarchy in the very beginning of the book. So that's super interesting. And you might need to stop after reading that chapter before you move on. But the sin of sloth in particular, she starts off, what's really also cool about this book that she does is she starts off each chapter with how the sin is ingrained in us now. And then she ends each chapter with, if we were to do this, if we were to move through this acceptance, how we could make some fundamental changes, which ultimately, as we all know, for anyone who's here and works with animal communication, intuitive coaching, or mediumship, any of these types of things, when we work on ourselves, the ripple effect that goes out is so profound. And so, because we're all energy. And so when we can work on ourselves, the impact that we have going forward is tremendous. It takes a lot sometimes for us to think, and I talk about myself in this regard too, to realize that the more I work on myself, the more other things happen. It's also a manifestation rule, law of attraction rule. But when I work on myself and keep my energy high, it helps affect other things positively as well. So like, for example, the sin of sloth, she starts off with believing sloth to be sinful, we deny ourselves rest. And she talks, for example, how in her household, her husband can come home. My husband can do this too, can come home and just sit down and immediately start scrolling through Instagram. Meanwhile, I am cooking, feeding the dog, cooking dinner, worrying about when am I going to have time to vacuum up all the dog hair, all these types of things. And I'm not sitting down and resting. He has no problem doing that because he's been taught that. I have not been taught that. I've been taught to resting, denying myself rest is a way for me to overcome this sin of sloth. So there's things like this that we begin to recognize. And then, but the end of the chapter, she says this, accepting sloth as essential, we can demand support, embrace rest, and reserve our strength for the worthiest work. And so for me personally, I now have been asking for when I need help, because even asking help, and I have a lot of intuitive clients and a lot of animal communication clients, where asking for help is something we've never been taught to do. We've never been encouraged to do. And so just this one chapter really helped me see when I need help, how to ask for help, how to help others ask for help. Like it's just so impactful. So I cannot recommend this book enough. On Our Best Behavior, The 7 Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay to Be Good, from Elise Loehnen. Currently, you can get it at a library, currently in hardback. I don't think the paperback comes out for quite some time. It is available worldwide. She has a podcast called Pulling the Thread, where this does get ingrained as well throughout, and she finds different teachers. It is through her that I found Dr. Gabor Mate. It is through her that I found Dr. Jennifer Freed, who is a psychologist and astrologer. And I've actually been taking classes from Dr. Jennifer Freed, and she's amazing. So I've been finding a lot of people through her to help support the work that I do with the animals and with the guides. So anyways, On Our Best Behavior, read it. The other book, and I don't have a copy of it because I did get it from my library, is called Rest as Resistance. It is from Tricia Hersey, Reverend. She is a minister in the southern part of the United States. She does something called the NAP ministry, and it fits so well into the sin of sloth, because she's realizing that because we don't rest, we are fueling an unsustainable culture in where we constantly have to keep moving and being productive in an effort to continually purchase things, to continually have things that may be all the things that we actually don't need and actually don't even want. Like, do we actually really want to be exhausted in order to continue to cover this overhead that we've created that maybe no longer is serving us? And she talks a lot about that. And the subtitle of, it's Rest as Resistance is the title. But resting, because we're also being taught the sin of sloth, that the sloth is a sin. And so because of that, we aren't resting, and we're realizing that our bodies aren't capable of this either. And we really absolutely need rest. So I would also recommend, in addition to reading On Our Best Behaviors, following that up, even if you just read that first chapter and then follow it up with Rest is Resistance. It's an interesting read in and of itself, as well as in relationship to that, because it does also talk about, if we were to rest more, we would be kinder to one another. When we can't rest, we actually just get disconnected from our community because we don't have the energy to engage. We don't have the time to engage. We don't even have the bandwidth to engage properly, heart to heart wise. We also are denying connection to ourselves. And we're also denying sometimes connection to the divine, because we don't have time to actually worship, whatever that might mean for you, on that connection. So Rest is Resistance. I'll put that book in the show notes so that you all can see it, because I don't have a copy, like I said. Something else to think about, though. So 2 books, particularly nonfiction books, to make you more aware and to help you as you continue to grow and realize what negative beliefs and what patterns are at play for you and what necessarily isn't serving you anymore. And the last book I want to leave you with is actually a work of fiction. I love fiction, and I was a huge fiction reader. And then I started dabbling in more nonfiction stuff of late, like these last 2 years and so. But this book I've actually had for quite some time, since it was a finalist for the Booker Prize, as well as a finalist for the National Book Award here in the United States. And that book is called A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. And I don't know if I said her name right. Oh, it is a beautiful, beautiful book. It is at times very hard to read in an emotional perspective. So I do want to make you aware of that. It's not an easy read, because from an emotional perspective, the suffering that a human goes through can be really quite triggering. The language that is used, the love that is used around this is so exquisite. I had a hard time putting it down. Many nights you can see it's rather thick. It is over 800 pages. This is the paperback edition. It is over 800 pages. I have had this book on my bookshelves since it became a Booker Prize finalist and was listed in The Economist as like the best book of the year. And this is probably 2015, 2016, something. Oh, I could look, Julie, you could look. But anyway, it's really good. I've had multiple people, 2015. I've had multiple people tell me about this, and I finally felt it was time to pick it up. And I will say that the reason why I'm sharing this book with you is it really highlights a human's exploration of understanding why they are not good enough, not lovable, not safe, secure, and protected, and not worthy. I mean, all the 4 main negative beliefs that I work with and the guides work with in intuitive coaching sessions, and even the animals, as they begin to highlight that for you as an entryway into working deeper with yourself or on yourself. The main character in this book has had such a tremendous amount of what I would call big T trauma, that he cannot see himself as lovable, good enough, worthy, or safe, secure, and protected. And the people around him who consistently throughout his entire life try to get him to see it. And he is still ultimately, I don't think, I will say, I was going to say not capable of seeing it, but I do think he does actually see it. It's just really hard to see. It is an exquisite read. Again, I will tell you, it can be very difficult at times, because it is so raw, so vulnerable, so real in him trying to see himself as others see him, and how many times he just cannot. But I will tell you, I will treasure this book and the lessons that it has, the messages that it has, and the language that it uses. So again, A Little Life, Hanya Yanagihara. Hope I said that right. I know she's written other books since. I'm certainly going to be looking those up. I have a couple pages here, dog ear, just because the language is so exquisite. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you too. A fiction aspect from a big T, also probably little T traumas in here too with the other characters, and someone who's just struggling with negative beliefs, as we all are. So those are the books that I have for this period. I'm currently reading the one I just read. I'm not too keen on, so I'm probably not going to share that, but I know I will be having some other books here going forward. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts for other books, please share them in the comments below. Please go ahead and hit subscribe so that others can find these videos. I am so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful for the positive feedback that I get on the book videos. I love that people engage. It's just, books are just amazing. So thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here, and I will see you soon. Take really good care of yourself in the meantime.